Hey, it's Rebecca Simon Peter with Leadership Mojo today. And I am joining you. This is Tropical Leadership Mojo because I'm joining you from the beautiful island of Hawaii, in which many beautiful women and beautiful women's history has taken place. So, this is Women's History Month, and this is International Women's Day. This, not today, but this Leadership Mojo is in honor of. And so, I really want to focus on women in ministry. So being a woman in ministry myself, I've experienced the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the kind of okay, and the terrible. And while there's surely more work to be done, I'd really like to thank and acknowledge all the wonderful predecessors that made a way for me. Their persistence, their commitment to equality, their stand for their voices to be heard, all of that really allowed me to fulfill my call to ministry. And I also want to share with you during this Leadership Mojo how you can remember, how you can encourage, and how you can celebrate the women in your life so that we make space for more women in leadership roles in church, in synagogue, in mosque, in government, in family, and beyond. So, as is the case in many fields, ministry has long been male dominated. Jesus was male, but Mary was female. So we have a good precedent for both men and women being at the forefront of ministry. And in a lot of ways, women in ministry is still pretty modern. Even though we live in postmodern days, it's pretty modern. And even today, some denominations don't allow women to be ordained or to do much in the way of leadership positions in the church. And when I was called to ministry, gosh, like 30 years ago, into Christian ministry, although before that I was called into Jewish ministry, I really had wanted to be a rabbi. And I found myself in the Orthodox Jewish community. And you may know something about Orthodox Judaism, that there's a mechitza or a separator between the women on one side and the men on the other side. And I'm over here on this side, on the one side of the separator. I kept trying to figure out how to get myself over on the other side up front where the rabbi was leading. Well, God had an answer for me. It didn't involve remaining in the Jewish community. It definitely involved coming on over to the Christian community. So when I was called to ministry, I mean, the surprising part for me was that it was Christian ministry, not that I, as a female, was going to be called, but that it was going to be about following Jesus. So I had this amazing Jesus experience, as I've shared many times. But I've had so many powerful female waymakers go before me. My mom, Dottie, my aunt Rosie, that's my dad's aunt, my grandmothers, Vera and Miriam, waymakers in so many powerful ways in their era, in their generation, that I just didn't even question, as a woman, should I be called? I am who I am, and I knew God was calling me. But it was only afterwards that I discovered the truly remarkable women in the United Methodist Church, and even before the United Methodist Church, that really had helped pave the way for me and so many other of my colleagues into what the church is today. So after I graduated seminary, I went to the Iliff School of Theology. I spent 12 years pastoring a series of beautiful, fabulous churches in the Western United States. And this was all capped off by a church in Rollins, Wyoming, really vibrant church. Now, when I arrived in 1999, I'm just aware I'm speaking really fast, but that's because I love this topic. Rollins First United Methodist Church, one of my all-time favorite churches. And when I arrived in 1999, to this town of about 10,000, it was really the first time I'd spent any time in Wyoming. Now, I've been here about 99, yeah, a lot of years. I can't do the math right now, but a lot of years, decades I've been in Wyoming. I was the first female pastor appointed to this church. Now, the population of the town was about 10,000, and that included the prison population. So it gives you a sense of the town and a sense of the size. And the first Sunday that I stepped into the pulpit, it was a hot, dry August day, and the pews were filled. The air conditioning wasn't working, so they had the doors open. But the pews were filled. Even though they'd been without a pastor for about 6 months, a lot of people came streaming back. And this continued for quite a few Sundays. And later I found out why. It wasn't just that I was a good preacher, although I like to think so. It's because I was the lady preacher, and they were coming to check me out. I was the first female appointed to this church, and people wanted to see, like, what's the deal? What's the scoop here? And although the United Methodist Church has historically been more accepting towards women in leadership roles and in ministry, I was still met with plenty of wariness and resistance. Now, Wyoming is known as the equality state and super independent. So you might think, no big deal, because all the women in the lay women were in leadership roles in the church. Why not have a female at the head? So for me personally, I'm naturally direct and energetic and decisive, pretty decisive, and fast paced. And during the early days of my ministry, people weren't always used to my candor. I think they thought maybe that would be more appropriate for male leaders. I'm not really sure. But you know what really killed people more than my personality? Some people loved my preaching, but they hated that I was female, and it killed them. It tore them apart. They were really torn. I remember one Sunday in particular, there was a guy who came down the aisle when the service was over, and he talked with me about my theology and my biology, and he couldn't reconcile the two. I was okay with it. I knew God called me. I just knew it. You know how you just know? I just knew it. There's no way I would have been in the ministry if I wasn't called. There were way too many obstacles, personally, professionally, theologically, all of that. But he just couldn't reconcile my theology, my biology, my ecclesiology, and my preaching. And I actually counted a win that he was so torn. I think women in ministry, and men, of course, too, and children, we do a lot of seed planting. Sometimes the seeds don't bloom in our days and in our time and in our seeing, but we do plant seeds. We do plant seeds. So I like to think that that particular person whose name and face I can no longer remember, even now is like more open to learning from a woman and hearing from a woman and going, maybe he even goes to a church now with a female preacher. I don't know. Maybe his daughter is a female preacher. I just like to think about that because I know we're always planting seeds. And even if we can't see them germinate and bloom in our time, indeed, they will. So I just kept trusting God and trusting God's call in my life and honestly trusting myself. And most days I didn't recoil. Most days I didn't lose confidence. I mean, sometimes I did, but not in God's call of me. Not that. Just was I cut out for what I was there to do. So I really just continued to embrace who I was. I still do, and trust in my leadership qualities, and honestly continued to develop my leadership qualities. Because as a female, I'm pretty darn prone to people pleasing. And I don't think there's really a place for that in mature, strong leadership. And so I'm just confessing that people pleasing is still something I wrestle with and continue to let go of on a daily basis, because I see that the female voices in the church are needed because we're half the population. The male voices in the church are needed. They're half the population, but men and women who are called and competent and collaborative and compassionate, the church needs us, and visionary and no nonsense. So right now, the United Methodist Church has come a long way in its affirmation of female leaders, Black leaders, white leaders, Hispanic leaders, Asian leaders, Latina leaders, all kinds of Native leaders. And all of that needs to continue in women serving in ministry. But there's more work to be done. Isn't there always? There's just always more work to be done between women as well as between our leadership and the people that we lead. So I want to offer 3 suggestions for how we can acknowledge the strong, the powerful, the beautiful, the collaborative women around us as church and as a society. So number 1, ready? Are you taking notes? Number 1, remember the influential women from your past. Remember them and celebrate them. So undoubtedly, you too have had aunts and grandmothers and mothers and sisters and friends and mentors who have helped you to where you are today, just like my Aunt Rosie, my mom, my grandmothers, so many mentors, so many friends and cousins. And it just appreciate their love, appreciate their support, their guidance. Even if it went unnoticed, you appreciate it, you acknowledge it, you affirm them, and offer thanks for their influence in your life. And I think it's really powerful to do it not only privately, but publicly. I just think that's really beautiful to do that publicly. It could be a thank you card. It could be a note. It could be a sermon about them. It could be so many things. Number 2, take it on yourself to be the mentor for the next generation. I had such a beautiful mentor. The Reverend Lucia Guzman was my mentor in ministry. She was one of my mentors. And I've really taken it upon myself to be a mentor for the next generation of women. And I do that through creating a culture of renewal. I do it through a number of different ways. Even the women that work with me in the ministry, has been so powerful to be a mentor and to watch other women gain their strength, find their voice, take their place in leadership and family and society. It's just really, really powerful to do that and to be that. I don't have kids. My legacy is the people around me, though, especially the women around me. That's where I'm really really trying to leave my values alive, because each woman has something to offer. And the more those women's voices are empowered, the more each woman finds her own place, the more powerful and empowered our world is, because everybody is contributing. Now, the third thing is to celebrate successes. When you see women, celebrate them. When you see women succeeding, celebrate them. When you see women trying but not succeeding, celebrate them. When you see people who are really opening themselves up to answer the call in their lives, celebrate them. That's what we can really do. So if negative voices try to diminish women's success, you be the one that stands there. You be the one that holds them up. You be the one that whispers in their ear and empowers them and gives them what they need to really shine. And a lot of times it's just acknowledging the person for what they're already doing. That allows them to find the next foothold, the next inner grit, the next, piece of strength to do what they need to do. Now, for the last few years, we've been asking difficult questions as the church under its leadership has really strived to do well during the years of the pandemic, such as how are we going to survive as a church? How are we going to live to serve another day? How are we going to meet the needs of the people around us? How can we positively impact our communities? How can we personally keep going when things are so tough, especially when we are not even sure that we can keep the lights on? So keep going. That's really what I want to say to you. We are coming through this pandemic. We are coming out of it. Here in Hawaii, the mask mandate is about to go away. I think it's the last state in the union that's really had a mask mandate, and we are coming out of this. It'll be time soon enough for us to figure out the next steps. But if you're watching this session of Leadership Mojo, and thank you for watching, chances are you are a leader in your congregation, in your community, in your family, and thank you for your courageous leadership. Thank you for being the one that has stood during the pandemic. Thank you for the ones who's had the webcam open or the webcam on or the doors open or the lights on or the phone lines open. Thank you for being that stand to keep things alive, to keep things moving, to give people hope during these days, because it's not easy and it's not been easy. So as a part of that, I'm offering a beautiful class. It's going to start, I think it's March 18th. Check out our website, RebeccaSimonPeter.com, how to do more with less. As we come through this pandemic, how to do more with less. It's doable. It's possible. We can only do it if we're together, not if we're being lone rangers. But that's one of the things women are really, really great at, is seeking each other's company, seeking each other's support, seeking each other's wisdom. Come to this class so that we can pour into each other. How to do more with less. So thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for your love, your voice, your courage. It's been a pleasure to be with you today. Aloha, and I will see you next week on Leadership Mojo. Take care.